You've been told your vitamin D is low. You've been supplementing, your levels still aren't moving, and nobody is telling you why. If that statement just described your last blood panel conversation, I want you to hear something that most doctors, most supplement companies, and most health content creators are not explaining clearly. When it comes to vitamin D absorption, the problem is not usually your dose. It's most likely not your supplement brand, or what time of day you're taking it, or whether you're taking it with fat or not. Because vitamin D does not work in isolation. It works within a system. And one of the most overlooked parts of that system is the gut, specifically the environment created by your gut bacteria, your gut microbiome, and a compound they produce called butyrate. Now, your gut is not the only factor when it comes to vitamin D absorption, but it is a big one. And what research is starting to show is that your gut environment actually can dictate how well your body utilizes vitamin D when you take it. And for a lot of people, that's the missing piece, because the real issue isn't how much vitamin D you're taking, it's whether your body is in a state where it can actually use it. Hi, I'm Lauren Grace, acupuncturist, integrative medicine physician, and co-founder of Healus. Now, when I was running my practice, vitamin D testing was something that we did on every patient, and I almost never saw optimal vitamin D levels, ever, even in patients that were supplementing. And our practice was in Florida. I had a lot of patients that spent tons of time in the sun, out boating, and believe me, not all of them were wearing sunscreen, and they still had below optimal levels. And it didn't make sense to me in the beginning because these patients were doing what they were told. I mean, and it's what the textbooks tell you, to supplement with vitamin D, get some sun, and your levels should go up. But clinically, that just wasn't what I was seeing. There was a pretty big gap between what we were telling patients to do and what the test results were actually showing. And that gap is what led me to start looking beyond vitamin D itself and into the systems that determine how your body actually uses it. So let's walk through how vitamin D absorption actually works, because this is where most people are missing the key piece. When you take vitamin D or get it from the sun, it doesn't enter your body in its active form. First, it has to go to your liver, where it's converted into what's called 25-hydroxyvitamin D. That's the storage form. Then it goes to your kidneys, where it's converted into the active form. And now that's the form that your body can actually use. And now that active form doesn't just float around, it works by binding to vitamin D receptors that are found throughout your body, especially in your immune system and your gut. So for vitamin D to do its job, it's not about how much you're taking, but one, how well is it converting through the liver and the kidneys? And then when it's in its active form, how is that active form interacting with the different environments and systems in your body? And one of the key environments when it comes to vitamin D utilization is your gut microbiome. Now, your gut bacteria produce a compound called butyrate. And butyrate is one of the key molecules that helps you maintain a healthy gut environment. Butyrate does many things throughout the body, but in the gut, it actually helps to fuel the cells that line your colon, and that helps to strengthen and maintain the gut lining. It also plays a major role in regulating inflammation, and it helps to influence and regulate your immune system. And here's why that matters for vitamin D. Vitamin D is also working on those same systems. It's helping to regulate your immune response. It helps control inflammation. Vitamin D even helps to maintain the integrity of the gut lining. So both vitamin D and butyrate are acting on what we call the gut immune axis. They're not doing the exact same thing, but they are supporting the same systems. Now, when butyrate levels are low, which is very common with low fiber diets, stress, antibiotics, just poor lifestyle in general, the gut environment will start to shift. The cells lining the colon don't get the fuel they need. The gut barrier starts to become weak. And with that, what can happen is things like LPS, which are lipopolysaccharides. They are inflammatory components that your gut bacteria produce. The cells lining the colon don't get the fuel they need. The gut barrier becomes weaker, which can lead to things like leaky gut. And in that case, you can have something called LPS, lipopolysaccharides, which are inflammatory components that gut bacteria produce, they can start to leak and get into circulation. When that happens, that drives chronic low-grade inflammation. And in an inflammatory environment like that, vitamin D signaling becomes pretty ineffective, even if you're taking it, because vitamin D is trying to regulate a system that is already dysregulated at the gut and immune level, and that will affect those vitamin D receptors. So even if you have the active form in your body, it might not be utilized well because vitamin D needs that healthy environment in order to actually do its job. Now, I know that may seem a little backwards because you're probably taking vitamin D to become healthier, but if the environment that you're putting it into isn't already healthy enough, then the vitamin D is not being utilized properly. And we're gonna dig into this more. But this is where we actually start to see a feedback loop between vitamin D and butyrate. Because not only does the gut influence how well vitamin D is utilized, vitamin D also influences how healthy the gut environment is. So a healthy gut environment brought on by butyrate helps to support immune regulation, and better immune regulation supports how well vitamin D functions and is utilized in the body. And here's the interesting thing. Vitamin D itself appears to help support the type of bacteria that produce butyrate in the first place. And this is exactly what newer research is starting to explore. A recent paper looked at the relationship between vitamin D, the gut microbiome, and butyrate. And they found that vitamin D helps to increase butyrate-producing bacteria. And that in turn, butyrate helps to regulate the immune activity in the gut and better utilize vitamin D. Now, researchers are looking more into this pathway, and they're actually investigating how the relationship between vitamin D and butyrate relates to chronic disease and even cancer. Now, this is still an emerging area of research, but it does reinforce what we've been seeing clinically. Vitamin D does not work in isolation, and how well it works depends on the health of the environment that it's entering. And if that environment is inflamed, if the gut isn't functioning well, butyrate production is low, that may be one reason that the vitamin D you're taking isn't responding in your body the way it should be. And I want to zoom out for a second and talk about vitamin D deficiency specifically, because most people associate vitamin D with just bone health, and it is very important for bone health, but there are vitamin D receptors found throughout the body, in the brain, in the immune system, in your cardiovascular system, the endocrine system, even muscle tissue. So when active vitamin D is low, it's not isolated to just one area of the body like your bones, it's actually a systemic issue. In the brain, vitamin D plays a direct role in neurological function. It's involved in serotonin regulation, mood stability, and helps to control neuroinflammation. Low levels of vitamin D are consistently associated with depression, cognitive decline, and neurological dysfunction. Now, layer that with what we just talked about. If the gut is inflamed and butyrate levels are low, then things like LPS can drive chronic immune activation, and you now have a nervous system that's functioning in a constant low-grade inflammatory state. Now, in the immune system, vitamin D is one of the key regulators of T regulatory cells. These cells help prevent overreaction of the immune system that can lead to autoimmune disease. Without enough vitamin D, T-reg function declines, immune balance becomes unstable, and inflammation increases. And I've gone into depth on this in other videos, but butyrate also plays a role when it comes to your T regulatory cells. So when both vitamin D and butyrate are low, you lose two major signals that keep that immune system in check. Vitamin D also plays a role in metabolic function, including insulin sensitivity, blood sugar regulation, and overall metabolic activity. Low vitamin D has been linked to insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. And again, these are also conditions that are strongly tied to gut health and butyrate. Now, one of the most common symptoms that people report due to low vitamin D is fatigue. And it's really no wonder, because this is what happens when the immune system is constantly activated and you're in a state of chronic inflammation, when the brain is always dealing with inflammation, and when your metabolic processes are just less efficient. All of that happening at the same time, of course you're going to be tired. So if you are someone that is taking vitamin D to support all these systems in your body, it can be really frustrating to hear that the vitamin D you're taking may not be utilized well just because of a compromised gut. But there is a solution, and it starts with restoring your gut environment and your butyrate production. And now I know that fixing your gut is not something that's going to happen overnight, and it can be daunting. But to keep it simple, the first step here, the first thing you want to focus on is fiber. Your gut bacteria rely on fiber to produce butyrate. So getting enough fiber, around 25 to 30 grams a day, is one of the best things that you can do to lay a foundation for a healthy gut environment. And I would encourage you to eat a variety of fiber from different sources. You want some prebiotic fiber, some soluble, insoluble, etc. But fiber will help support butyrate production, which will in turn help support a healthy gut environment and how well active vitamin D is utilized in your body. So it starts with fiber. Now, one thing I will say from a clinical experience, that if your gut is already compromised, eating a whole lot of fiber might not feel so good. That can produce some gas, some bloating, and if you have conditions like IBS or an inflammatory bowel condition, it can actually make your symptoms worse. So the solution isn't always just eat more fiber. So when it comes to fiber, you may need to start slow, and if you really do have a hard time, if your gut's already compromised, then getting in all that fiber might not be possible for you at first. And this is where butyrate supplementation can come in handy, because instead of relying entirely on your gut bacteria to produce it, you can take it directly. Now, there are different forms of butyrate, and one of the most common that you'll see on the market is a sodium butyrate. Sodium butyrate is absorbed pretty quickly in your body, and usually in the upper part of your small intestine. It's very unlikely that that form of butyrate will actually make it to your lower intestine. And while you'll get systemic benefits with sodium butyrate, you don't have as much of a direct impact on the gut microbiome. This is why in our practice we use something called tributyrin. Tributyrin is a more bioavailable and stable form of butyrate. It's actually absorbed very slowly along the intestinal tract, so you get much more optimal absorption. And for our butyrate supplement, the Complete Biotic, we actually utilize patented delayed release capsules that allow the product to pass through stomach acid intact and helps to ensure an even slower, more sustained delivery to the lower parts of the intestine. And it's great to supplement with butyrate and vitamin D together. Butyrate will help support that healthy gut environment that vitamin D needs, and they are working on a lot of the same systems in the body. So synergistically, they go together really well. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, is that maintaining optimal vitamin D levels is not about how much you're taking. It's about whether your body is in a state that it can actually utilize it. Because again, vitamin D does not work in isolation, it works within a system. And butyrate is one of the key pieces that helps support that system. So if your levels haven't been responding the way you expected, it may not be a dosing issue, it may just be a signal that your gut environment needs some support. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, if you could give us a like, that would be amazing. And if you think this video would help someone else you know, please share it. If you have more questions about vitamin D and its connection to butyrate, please leave them in the comments below. And you'll find more about everything we talked about, including our butyrate supplement, the Complete Biotic, in the description. Thank you so much for watching and have a beautiful day.